What is up, everybody? Welcome back here to the TDR Show. Jay is back, and we're talking Devy. So I did get a bunch of requests here asking for some Devy content, and I know it doesn't play as well on YouTube, but we do want to talk about it because that's what that's why we're in this thing is because of Devy. So we're gonna do a freshman impact check-in. So essentially, what we recently did a 10-round mock draft. It is in our Patreon. It's going to be up on our Substack later this week. But we're going to be talking about kind of like, hey, who are some guys that from a freshman standpoint that you should be checking in on? And we're going to go through a bunch of different guys because it can be different in Devy drafts with freshmen. Like I think that the freshman craze is over a couple years ago, man. All these drafts, first 3 rounds is all freshmen. And now we're starting to see it kind of narrow out a little bit. So what we're going to go through some freshman tiers. We are going to talk about kind of like who's commanding that first, second round ADP and okay, who's after that, who's close. We're going to talk about expectations for some of these guys, where we see them at, a little bit of strategy, a little bit of everything in terms of what we're looking at with the freshmen in Devy drafts. So stick with us. If you're on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button while the intro is going. If you're on the podcast, thank you guys so much. You know that we appreciate you guys as well. So before we get into the players, I do want to talk about just in general with freshmen and strategy a little bit what we're looking for. And then Jay can chime in. He'll yell at us. He'll tell us what his spreadsheets tell us what they want. But just the position in general, quarterbacks, I want them on the field as soon as possible. So if I'm drafting a quarterback, I want a guy that's going to be out there because we've seen so many Malachi Nelsons. We've seen so many, even Dante Moore, for example. We've seen guys that like, hey, all of a sudden now we're like, oh, man. I mean, Malachi's dead. He's a dead asset. Dante Moore, we're hoping he bounces back. I mean, I saw him on a top 5 list recently for the Big Ten. So that's exciting. But to me, when you're thinking of like, all right, I want to make sure that they're going to play because the worst thing is just draft a guy like Ty Thompson. Remember him from Oregon? He threw for like 15,000 yards in high school for 3 years in Arizona, and he just hasn't got out there, right? He just didn't get out there. The worst thing you do is draft a Devy quarterback that doesn't get to play ever, right? Because that's just a value plummet. So for quarterback position, I'm like, okay, do I realistically see a scenario within 1, maybe 2 years where they're going to get out there? At the running back position, I mean, I want elite traits, so we're going to talk about that. Do these guys have elite traits? And they got to have a path because the transfer portal destroys the pass for these guys. So if they have a path to get on the field as freshmen to showcase some of that ability and talent, I'm more excited about them and their Devy value, right? Wide receivers, same thing. You want them to produce early. Micah Hudson is a perfect example of a guy not producing. Now we're really worried about him, after transferring a couple schools. And so you're worried about that. And for the tight ends, I don't touch them. Don't touch tight ends. It's not worth it. Looking at how many tight ends have changed the position of wide receiver, right? We talked about that in our Discord recently, like Deuce Robinson. He thinks he's a wide receiver. Kills my tight end shares. I draft him as a damn cheat code in tight end. He's not that anymore. If I have to rank him as a wide receiver, he's down the list. So there's things that you have to like really watch for in that. So that's why I'm kind of avoiding tight end. So that's a very generalized kind of strategy base with the freshmen coming in. Do you have anything to add, change, argue in there, Jay?
No, I think the only point that I make is you go back and you look at 247 on 3 and you look at these player rankings over time and you're like, man, the hit rate is tough. And just like with rookie, you kind of get like rookie fever. And those players in startup ADP, they kind of push themselves up. They kind of because everybody's excited about the unknown here. Well, I feel like that a lot of that kind of stuff happens with freshmen, and the hit rate is not going to be that great. Now we're going to have our favorites, and we think that these guys might do well, and we're going to talk through some of that stuff. But still, just keep in mind the freshman hit rate is not high, and then if you push them up to where you're actually trading off versus somebody that's actually producing that might actually be in the NFL soon, then it's a tough trade-off to make those things. You just have to be careful when you're going through your drafts. I've been in a couple drafts and I'm doing a lot of mock drafts here as well. It can vary, right? So you can get with a group of guys that are all about production and want to see those guys that are going to come to the NFL sooner. And then there might actually be some values among the freshmen because they might actually, from what you might view as maybe actually better players. Yeah. But the other side of that is you get in these drafts where everybody wants that new thing, that new player, that the unknown player, and they just get pushed up too high. And so you just kind of, the word of caution is just be careful. Just like with rookie fever, you have freshman fever that goes along with Devy drafts. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your drafts.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Like, just be very careful with that freshman fever too, like Jay talked about. Like, you got to be very, like, I get a lot of DMs and a lot of questions about, like, oh, should I draft this guy in terms of where he's going? And I say, what's on the board? And if there's a guy that's kind of similar profile that could be drafted next year, I'm going to lean that way for the most part, right? Like those risers up there in that value. And so you just got to be very careful with just drafting too heavy of freshmen. But there's also a room for that. So let's get into it. Let's talk about kind of where the freshmen are going, because you might want to draft some of them, right? So again, and these tiers are marked elite based on ADP, right? So this is your elite tier. I'm not saying Bryce Underwood is elite. I hope he is. As a Michigan fan, I hope. Give me some elite play, Bryce. And then you have like Dakorien Moore, wide receiver, Oregon. Really, those two guys and maybe a couple more we'll talk about kind of the next up tier are really the only ones I'm seeing go in the first and second. And Bryce is going pretty damn early. I even saw in C2C he's going top 5. Like he's definitely going pretty high there. And in Devy, he is going top 8, like realistically. Now, not a lot of leagues like us, because we very, very rarely tell you to draft Devy quarterbacks. But so Bryce is sitting there in first round ADP. Dakorien sitting there at the second round ADP there. With Bryce, I mean, he comes in as one of the most heralded quarterback prospects ever. And you're looking at the depth chart, I mean, it's Mikey Keene, and Mikey Keene is bad. And I think Bryce still has room to growth. I mean, from the spring reports, and I have the background information on 247 Sports that I try to give the listeners out there on our Substack. He definitely had an up and down spring. It wasn't perfect for Bryce. He definitely struggled at times. So that's something to know. But he does have Mikey Keene behind him. And I will tell you this, Jaden Davis is transferring. He's not ready for this type of play. So you're not worried about him. You're just basically worried that he's going to beat out Mikey Keene, which I think he's going to. On the other side, Dakorien Moore, there's an avenue for him. And it sounds like he's performing pretty well. I think the big thing for him, he's got to overcome Dan Lanning's freshman doghouse. Dan Lanning doesn't play a lot of freshmen. So when you're looking at the roster ahead of him, Gary Bryant Jr. is there. And whatever you think of Gary Bryant Jr., he's a glue guy. Justice Lowe is there, and so is Evan Stewart. So he's got to find his way there, right? He's going to have to figure out, can he beat out Gary Bryant Jr. or Lowe in those spots? Now, can he? Yes, he could be their Jeremiah Smith. He's not Jeremiah Smith. I don't want anybody to think I said he's that kind of player. But Lanning could look at him being that impact freshman that they've needed and give him that run there. So how do you feel, before I get into my takes about their ADP, what do you feel about these guys, where they're going relative to kind of their talent?
Yeah, I want to ask you 2 questions since I got you here, the Michigan man here. I got two questions, one on Bryce and one on Dakorien. So what do you think about the pass catching talent for Bryce Underwood this year? You got Colston Loveland leaving. It looks like they got 2 transfers, Donovan McCulley and Anthony Simpson. Got Frederick Moore, Samaj Morgan, the freshman, Andrew Marsh, Jamar Browder. What we saw with Dylan Royale last year was, yes, we were excited about him. He went first round in freshman drafts. He was going to start right away. He had decent wide receiver talent, but not great wide receiver. He just had an okay year, and maybe that was because of him as a prospect and the weapons maybe around him. What do you think about Michigan's offense this year from pass catchers? Do you think that that's going to hinder his performance this year and maybe hurt him a little bit? Or do you think that he can kind of rise above that and sort of, increase the talent of the whole team?
So I think he's the type of player that can rise above talent, right? So I do think he's going to elevate it. Now, what grade would I give his weapons? C+. Probably. I don't think it's there yet. I don't think it's close to what they need it to be. I will say Marlon Klein and Hogan Hansen at tight end. They always love their tight ends. They're pretty damn good from a tight end perspective. So I think that's going to give them an outlet for Bryce, and I think that's great. And another thing too, I think Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall are going to give him a lot of pass catching options. So realistically, their best receiver is probably one of the running backs again. And that freaking sucks, because it drives me crazy that we can't build around these guys. However, there is one guy that I think is getting slept on out there, and I'm going to keep saying it. I don't care what anybody says. Samaj Morgan is a talented young man. And Samaj is one of those guys. We saw him in the Rose Bowl a couple years ago against Alabama. And I know he's frustrating because he has all this talent, but he has bad drops and he's kind of more of a gadget guy. I think Bryce is the type of quarterback that can get Morgan to that next level. So, like, for me, when I'm looking at it, like, if Anthony's great, Donovan's going to be fine. Frederick Moore's okay. But I think Morgan could be that difference maker, that X factor type guy that they're creative with in that offense. So that gives me a little hope. And I still believe, like, the two freshmen, Jamar Browder and Andrew Marsh, I think they can elevate as the season goes. I don't know about right away. I think there's going to be some time there to develop there. But I just look at the running backs they're two of the best running backs in the Big Ten. Then you have those tight ends that are fine. But if Samaj can take that next step, I really think that this offense takes that next step.
Yeah. All right. How about this one on Dakorien Moore? Would you, if you're picking, you're out there drafting, do you take Dakorien Moore or do you take Evan Stewart in your Devy draft? Who do you want?
Oh, you're going right at the heart, sir, with this one, because I'm a big Evan Stewart guy. But if it's from just a value-based perspective, I'm taking Moore because Stewart is trending down, right? And he had one game last year. It was against your Buckeyes at Oregon when they played at Oregon. That was it. Like, after that, I was like, damn, hey, we're back, baby. Evan Stewart train. Let's jump on the hype. And then he just didn't do it, right? So consistency wise, and I think so that's a great segue though for you talking about like how you do strategy wise. If you're looking at it from two guys like this, yes, Moore is going to be definitely a risk-ish because you're looking at a player that's a freshman, right? We don't know necessarily what that looks like, but the ceiling for Moore and the value he's going to still hold value, right? Even if he doesn't perform too well this year, or like maybe he doesn't get on the field as much, Evan Stewart would have to burst through those numbers that he has, which I still think Evan Stewart could be a top 5 player in the class, right? But even there, for just a value perspective, you're more likely to hit on Dakorien Moore from a value base from Devy circles than Evan Stewart, because Evan Stewart now has to have 1,000-yard season and be that guy. If Moore is even close to him, Moore is a top 5 pick next year, right? Like in Devy draft. So like, that's kind of how I look at the value-based drafting and what you're trying to do. But I would take Moore in that scenario. And I mean, I still think Evan could be fine. I just worry about that track record, Oregon wide receivers. There's a lot of things going into it in terms of that production profile that you're not going to like in your spreadsheets at some point when we start talking about the drafts. But I would lean Moore.
Yeah, and I think our rankings show that. So we have these combined Devy rankings, and we got Moore at wide receiver 9 and Stewart at wide receiver 17 from a Devy perspective in these combined rankings. And yeah, you're completely right. If Dakorien Moore catches 600 yards and 3 touchdowns or something like that, we're all excited, and his value's kind of trending up, because that's a great freshman season. Yeah. And Evan Stewart's got to just be lights out in his 4th year trying to get drafted next year with some question marks there. So I completely understand that bet, and I'd probably make that same bet as well.
Yeah. And as far as like just before, because we got to move on, we got a lot of players, but before, when you're looking at, I always get this question, are you drafting Bryce in the 1st round? No, I'm not drafting Bryce Underwood in the 1st round. Just not doing it, just from a Devy perspective, because Jay did bring up a point. If those weapons don't help him, or let's say he doesn't start right away with Mikey Keene, when you're going to be able to get Bryce Underwood? Probably in the 2nd or 3rd round next year. Probably, like, realistically, if that happens, like if you're thinking like, hey, he's going to fall a little bit. Look at where Dylan Raiola is going. He's going 2nd, right? 3rd, probably in that range, if I had to guess. Yeah, no, and that's kind of how I look at Bryce. Now, on the flip end, if Bryce freaking balls out as the next Cam Newton, which some people think that he could be, you definitely hit a landmine. But the probability, and I cannot believe I'm talking about probability, but the probability of him doing that is not very high. And I really stick to probability when I come to Devy. Like, I really stick to it. And I stick to my guns in terms of, hey, who are these guys going to hit? These profiles going to hit. I would much rather get a Bryce Underwood next year in the 2nd round or late 1st than the top 5 right now.
Yeah. Raiola went in the 4th round in this latest one we're doing, but on average, he's going in 3rd. It's like late 2nd, early 3rd kind of thing.
And Raiola had a pretty good year. It wasn't like terrible. Like, he got out there, he performed a little bit, but it wasn't amazing. I will say I do like the quarterbacks next year's class too. So the freshmen coming in, this is a good freshman class too. Next year's class has some freshmen as well. So like you're going to see that bump up too. So those are the things to kind of keep in mind. All right, let's look at the next tier. So we call this the next up tier, just kind of the next people up. They're close. Like we do have some second round ADP in there too. So I just wanted to mention that. So here's who was kind of going that second, third round, mostly third. These guys have been seeing really go in the third. I'm going to talk about the outlier in Bo because Bo Jackson's on here. But Keelon Russell, Alabama quarterback, second, third round ADP. Ousmane Kromah from Florida State, running back. He's going second or third round ADP. Bo Jackson, Ohio State running back, going third round. And in Harlem, Berry has had a hell of a spring for LSU. He's the true freshman running back. I mean, they're talking about him being running back 2 already behind Caden Durham. And Berry has a different profile than Caden Durham. So, like, that's something to note as we go through this. The one outlier I just want to say about Bo Jackson, I think Bo Jackson's ADP is much higher in our circles than other circles because we like Bo Jackson. And I'm very high on Bo Jackson. I had Bo Jackson as my running back 1 in January. So I do want to I think you can get Bo Jackson later than what he probably would get him maybe in Devy drafts, depending on when he's going. He is rising up a little bit because he did have a good spring and the coaching staff's talking about him a lot. And I do think he can get some run there. But that's just kind of an overview there. Any takeaways here, questions you have for these?
Yeah, what do you like about Keelon Russell? Do you think that he plays at all this season? Who do you think starts at Alabama for quarterback? Do you think it's Ty Simpson, or do you think Keelon Russell eventually gets that spot?
Ooh, Keelon Russell, baby. Let's talk about Keelon Russell. You know the Shannon Sharp, like Mountain Dew, where he shakes and he gets all excited. That's how I feel when I look at Russell and when I watch him play. Like the thing with him and the thing that just stands out about him, and I wrote about him a lot this offseason. I mean, he can go all 3 levels of the field with precision. He reminds me a ton. He has a better arm than Michael Penix Jr., but his ability to layer the football everywhere is definitely why this coaching staff, DeBoer, looked at him and said, oh, man, this got to be our guy. Like, I think that's huge about him. Like, he's blessed with speed, agility. He's got dual threat ability. Like, I love that all about him. In high school, he had a 70% completion percentage, so he got the ball quick. High school is one of those things, depends on who you're playing there. But he definitely he's one of the more exciting prospects, right? So, like, that's the thing, too, when you're talking about from Devy. You want to take Keelon Russell in the third or Bryce Underwood in the first? I'll take Keelon Russell in the third. Like, that's the difference. Like, and it's not that I don't like Underwood. I have to like Underwood. I'm obligated. I'm a Michigan fan. And I think he is a fantastic player. I love his tape. But it's all about value. So if I can get a guy like Keelon Russell, who, and this is the question that you asked, like, is he going to start? I based on what I've read and really kind of gone over the 247 sports and stuff, I don't think he's ready yet. Like, I think it's Ty Simpson's, I think, going to be the guy there at Alabama. But when you look at the track record for Russell, I mean, he's got the production, right? He threw over 4,055 touchdowns in his last year. He's National Gatorade Player of the Year. So we've seen that production profile from him. He's a hell of a player. I just think Ty is going to be their guy. And the reason why I think that is I think that DeBoer knows he's under a little bit of pressure this year. Like, I think after last year missing the playoff, you can't miss the playoffs 2 years in a row at Alabama. And I think that when he looks at that, I think Russell has a little bit developing. I mean, he gained like 20 pounds already. He's like at 192. I think he was playing at 167 or 8 or something like that crazy in high school, or 172 or something like that. So he's still got to, I think, probably put some weight on. He's a perfect candidate to kind of sit, redshirt, then go. And so that's the question, you're really stashing him. Like you're hoping he gets on the field next year. However, if Ty struggles, which we'll see. It sounds like he's doing really well. Like, it does sound like in camp he's had a hell of a connection with Isaiah Horton, who he played, I guess, high school ball with or 7-on-7 ball with, the transfer from Miami. So there's some familiarity there. That's the area of like, well, if Ty doesn't struggle, you're going to get stuck with Russell probably for 2 years. But he's the type of talent, though. The portal opens this up. He'd be the top quarterback in the portal next year if he ended up going there. So I don't mind taking him in the third round. I really like third round Keelon Russell.
This, like, as far as supporting cast go, I mean, I know Bryce Underwood's got the running backs there, but Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. But as far as, supporting cast go, this is a pretty good wide receiver room, pass catcher room for
pretty
Alabama.
Good, yeah.
So if he actually ends up taking the starter's job, that's one of those where you could get a giant rise in value from him. especially if he plays well with these players. And I think these type of you mentioned Isaiah Horton, but you got Jeremy Bernard and of course Ryan Williams, along with a whole bunch of other young pass catchers that are pretty good on that team as well. So that's one of those situations where you could get a rise because of the situations. And I think this goes into, some of the freshman stuff. You're going through the 247 rankings, you're going through the on-3 rankings, you're seeing those things, but where they go to school and where they play is also a signifier. Like running backs at Ohio State and wide receivers at Ohio State, wide receivers at LSU, those types of things do matter a little bit. And so it's not necessarily the school, it's maybe more the coach and how it's recruited in the past, but that is definitely the situation, is something to pay attention to. And if you got Keelon Russell eventually starting some point through this season, especially if Ty Simpson struggles, this could be a situation where, he develops that connection with Ryan Williams, Isaiah Horton, those types of things, and then just kind of goes off. And that's where you can see a huge upside case from this stage. That to me, that's kind of important when you're thinking about how you're going to select those guys.
Yeah, I mean, kind of good. Ryan Williams, Bernard, Isaiah Horton, who's crushing it. Jalen Hale, sleeper. Lotzier Brooks, freshman, we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Like, they're absolutely loaded there. The other guy, Bo, I want to talk about Bo because I know Jay's out there with Bo too, out there in Ohio land. I got this question about Bo. They said, well, realistically, how early is he going to get on the field? And when you look ahead of him, it's probably James Peoples, who we really like too. Like, I think James Peoples is a value. CJ Donaldson's fine. He's a grad transfer. He's going to be there for a year. And I think he's their Judkins light, but he's not close to Judkins talent, but he's their Judkins light. That's what they probably look at him as. And Peoples is more like their Travion Henderson mold. But Bo, he had a hell of a camp, and they were doing talking about him getting the ball as much as possible. They talked about him also for a kickoff return, punt return, maybe. I know they have Caleb Downs, but they did talk about maybe kickoff return and getting him the football. And I think there's an avenue where, you're going to see Bo Jackson on the field earlier. And I think he's better than Anthony Rogers. I think that's the other two freshmen out there. He's going a little later in drafts, like 9th, 10th round. And that's good value too for any Ohio State player. Just damn, if he's sitting there in 9th, 10th round, you grab him. But for Bo, I like the idea of stashing this kid because he is very, very talented. And I still stick with my comp. I mean, he's Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, in my opinion, when I watch him play, he's got that Jahmyr Gibbs type build, 6 foot, 205, 210. He's probably going to be bigger. He's going to be a little bit bigger than him. And honestly, I think running back 11 is way too low for him to be ranked in 247 Sports. He's a top 5 talent. Like, when you look at his junior season, I mean, he had 30 touchdowns, 1,700 yards. I mean, he was phenomenal. This kid just pops everywhere you go. So he's definitely a target of mine. Every Devy league I'm in, I have Bo Jackson. And
you know what's interesting is he's not a top 5 back because people, when they're drafting off of, on 3 and 247. And if you're out there and you're not in the Devy Royale universe, you could probably get him at a pretty good value across the space. And just, an anecdote, watching the spring game, it looks like it's going to be really hard to keep Bo Jackson off the field. But I had a final question on Ousmane Kromah. Like, how are you feeling about Florida State? I know he didn't quite make it in there for spring ball, but Kromah's, I think, my number 1 rated running back in this class. I really like him. I think he looks like a vet day one coming in. How are you feeling about, his chances of playing much this season behind what the older veterans like Roydell Williams and some of the younger guys like Cam Davis, him getting his chances this season?
See, that's what I'm worried about the most. I'm really worried about him getting on the field. I'm not as high. So I'm not as high on Kromah as other people. I'm not there with them. And they just got Gavin Sawchuk from Oklahoma too. So they just got another transfer. So when you're looking at the room, Roydell Williams, Cam Davis. Remember Cam Davis? Cam Davis is a pretty damn good prospect. Like, we talked about Cam last year. Samuel Singleton, Sawchuk, Jalen Lucas is still there. So there's a ton of running backs. And really, their running back 1 is Tommy Castellanos, the quarterback, because he can't throw. Like, sorry, Vince in our Discord. Like, I know you're going to get mad at me there, but Tommy just can't throw very well. So he's really going to take some attempts away too. I just don't see how Kromah is going to get in the field unless he's really that level of talent, but I don't see him being that that top 5 talent like there. I actually have him outside my top 5 running backs. I'm probably the only one that actually have him outside top 5. So that he scares me a lot. Like that profile where he's getting drafted. He went in the second round of a Devy draft that I was in recently. Like that's way too high for me for a guy that I don't think. I mean, he's at Florida State, but I could definitely see him transferring. Like he could definitely be a transfer for me. Who knows what's going to happen with Norvell if they don't have another good year? Like there's so many question marks to go into that.
At the if you're taking him in the second round, it seems like a very high risk. So depending on how much risk tolerance you have, it could be interesting take, but he could also bust pretty easily. Yeah. So, high risk, high reward, but also, there's a lot of risk there as well. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's always risk with these guys. I mean, Harlem Berry's another one. So when you're looking at the LSU depth chart, we mentioned him. He's going 3rd round running back. I mean, it's him or Caleb Jackson. And Caleb Jackson was a Devy darling last year, and he just fell off the map, and Caden Durham took over. And it does seem like Harlem Berry is pushing him for reps right now. So if that's the case, I would rather take Harlem Berry, who has more of an inside path to start, has already been in spring ball, looks really good there. And when you're looking at him from a career standpoint, what he's been able to do, I mean, he's had over 8,000 yards rushing in his career in high school. As a sophomore, had 2,000 yards. As a freshman, had 2,000 yards. Like this kid was just phenomenal there. The difference is Barry's going to come in at like 190. So if you're worried about the weight, that's kind of the difference in those categories there.
Yep.
All right, let's go to next tier. So this is a stash and C tier. However, there's some guys in here that you might really like, right? And I will say this. I've done Devy for a very long time, and so I've seen the fluctuations of freshmen going higher or lower. Some of these guys would be going much higher. Well, a few years ago, like a guy like Gideon Davidson, he's going to Clemson. Running back, he's going in the 4th round. So we have him in this tier. There's a lot of guys in this tier, by the way. I think there's 9. So we're going to get through as many as we can. But when you're looking at Gideon Davidson, running back, I mean, he's probably their starter. So if you're looking for a starter that's going to start right away, Gideon is that guy. I mean, I know that they have, Keith Adams is there. They moved, Adam Randall to running back. He's a former wide receiver, but Gideon's there. Wide receiver Vernell Brown out of Florida, 4th round ADP as well. I loved Vernell Brown's tape. He's so much fun. He's kind of a carbon copy of Eugene Wilson. Lotzier Brooks, Alabama. He's having a hell of a spring. He's probably the biggest riser in Devy that I've seen this offseason. So Lotzier is the biggest riser out there. Deuce Knight out of Auburn, getting 5th round ADP. He's a quarterback. And in wide receiver, Kaliq Lockett is slowly trickling up. So Ryan Wingo is a little banged up in the spring. Lockett's getting a little bit of love out there of like, hey, could possibly kind of make some noise there. So of these 5, it's kind of interesting to see kind of how their ADP has gone. But these 5 are all legit players, right? Like Deuce Knight could start this year if Jackson Arnold struggles. Like there's a lot of things about these guys that you have to like.
Yeah, I think in this class there's some pretty good quarterbacks. We saw 2 go kind of here, and then we're going to get a few more here in a bit. So there's 3 or 4 really really good quarterbacks, and then another 2 or 3 that are that next level of like, yeah, I kind of want some of these on my team, and I just got to make sure I take those value shots. But out of this group, Gideon Davidson is the one that really intrigues me because I think he was the Gatorade Player of the Year. I think he had a really good high school stats, led his team to a really great season, and now he's going to be starting for a team that's in a really nice offense. And maybe he's in a timeshare or whatever, but he's getting on the field as a freshman, presumed before the season even starts. That's really, really high praises for a Clemson team that is, I think, kind of like ready to go. They got some really good defensive linemen. They got a very experienced quarterback that might put some really good numbers up. They got an incredible pass catching group, one of the best in the country in TJ Moore, Brian Wesco, Antonio Williams. This team is ready to go, and if he can be involved here, I think he can be a pass catcher as well. But I think him being a part of this offense, I think this is a guy that could be a big riser. You might be seeing him go in the 2nd round next year, maybe even higher if he really really shoots off. Because I like this setup, and if he can get on the field and really get those carries this year, I think this is a really good setup for him.
Yeah, I mean, and a couple things that check the boxes, right? So what you wanted to hear in the offseason check boxes here for him. Well, one, I mean, Club Nick out here is just praising him and saying he's basically ETN. So he said he's Travis ETN. That's what he kind of reminds him of. He said that, when you're looking at his production, you have to love that. He had 2,000 yards last year, and on 34 rushing touchdowns last year in high school. And I know it's high school, but those are the type of production numbers that kind of pop off to you. And when you look at all the beat reporters, so there's a couple big beat reporters out there in Clemson that I really like. They talked about him being more explosive than Maffa, but kind of just as big. Like, he's not as big as Maffa, but he's explosive. Good vision, and he fits into the scheme, because that's the thing that I love about it. If he's fitting in a Clemson scheme out there in Riley's scheme, and we've talked about it, Clemson has a hell of a wide receiver room with TJ Moore, Bryant Wesco, Antonio Williams, even Tyler Brown is turning heads again. He's healthy. If that's the case, Davidson's going to get a lot of one-on-one opportunities in that second level. He's going to get a lot of empty boxes. That stuff matters. Like, those are the things that you're like, okay, if he's going to get a lot of that opportunity, then we're all aboard here. Like, and really, when you're looking at it, there's not a ton of people behind him. So I agree. I think Gideon Davidson is one of those guys that you have to really look at as being a value, right? If you can get him in the 4th or 5th round, I'm totally okay with that. I think that's a hell of a value for a kid like that, especially with the running back position. And I will say this, I have found myself drafting more running backs than I'm used to in Devy this year, because I think there is a value in that running back spot. I think that they land in good spots. There's locations where I can see them playing a lot. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love that.
All right. I will say about Kaliq Lockett. So the one guy I do want to just mention out of this group is Kaliq. Kaliq is, so with him, when you think of like what he's been able to do, and like just when you're looking at overall like his draft his recruiting pedigree, number 2 wide receiver in 247 Sports, very, very versatile kid. Like, just in his career, 150 catches, 2,600 yards, almost 29 touchdowns. But intangible, 6'2", 185, athletic, explosive, body control. Like, he is just enormous. Like, his wingspan is special. And you're looking at the depth chart ahead of him, there's some room for this. So when you're thinking of, like, they got Ryan Wingo, who I love, but Ryan Wingo's there, Parker Livingstone, DeAndre Moore. They, obviously they went out and grabbed, kid from Stanford, Emmett Mosley. They have Aaron Butler, Dalen McCutcheon. They got Michael Terry is a true freshman. Jamie French is a true freshman. But Kaliq, they think it could get into rotation this year. And if that's the case, 5th round wide receiver tied to Arch Manning for the next 2 years, because I do believe Arch is coming back next year. Him, Wingo being there, Moore, maybe possibly if DeAndre Moore can step up, fine. But I like the idea of getting Kaliq Lockett in the 5th. I think that's really good value.
Yeah, that just reiterates kind of like the situation thing. If you're a pass catcher and you can find a situation where you're tied to a great quarterback for a couple years, that helps your Devy stock. That gives you a chance, because in those offenses, there's going to be production. And if you can get a piece of that, then people are going to be excited about it. The other side of that is if you're the best wide receiver on an 8th best Big Ten team with no quarterback, how are you going to move up in Devy ranks if your offense can't get you the ball? Those are things that you have to kind of keep in mind. Or like the next best wide receiver at Texas A&M. I think those things you do have to keep in mind when you're thinking about those things. Arch Manning, great quarterback, and you're going to be involved in a good offense. That's a good situation. Those are things to look for while you're going through your drafts.
Yeah, and if you want to take a shot on a quarterback, so you're like, hey, Bryce might be a little bit too expensive. Keelon Russell, I'm worried about kind of where he's at. Deuce Knight's not a bad 5th round shot, right? These are the quarterbacks that could rise in value there. And Jackson Arnold's there, but if Jackson Arnold struggles again throwing the football like we saw at Oklahoma, Deuce, he freezes, that rope's getting tighter and tighter around his neck. He might have to throw Deuce out there if he doesn't want to lose his job. So again, if we see him get out there and get some playing time, again, all right, he's going to get that value. He's going to increase. So a lot of good, players here. I do want to.
Auburn's got a great wide receiver room too. So
yes.
Put that up there. If he gets start playing, then you're excited about that.
Yeah, 100%. Now, Texas is all across the board here in these stash and see. So the next 4 guys that we're going to mention, James Simon, 5th round ADP, is a running back going to Texas, true freshman. It's a crowded room, but he is going there. Jamie French is going in the 5th round too, wide receiver, out of Texas as well. Quincy Porter, Ohio State, a guy that Jay's really liked. Like Jay's really likes some Quincy Porter in there. And then wide receiver Dallas Wilson in the 5th round ADP is a damn steal for Florida. This kid is a very, very solid player. But the thing that I like the most about him, he crushed the spring, Jay. 10 catches in the spring game, 195 yards, 2 touchdowns. They've talked about him being one of the best players at camp. 6'4", 200 pounds, 4.5 40s. Whoo, like this just, I mean, those are the things you like to see. If I can get a guy like Dallas Wilson in the 5th round, that's a steal, because when you're thinking of who he's going to get the ball thrown by, DJ Lagway. DJ Lagway is probably QB1 of the 2027 class right now. And when you're looking at what's in front of him, Khalil Jackson's there, Michael J. Sturdivant's there, Eugene Wilson is there, but they don't have a guy like Dallas Wilson there. Like, and I love Vernell Brown, but he's more of that slot guy. They don't have an X guy like Dallas Wilson. Dallas Wilson's going to get on the damn field this year with DJ Lagway. And to me, he's going 1st round next year. Like, I could see Dallas Wilson being a 1st round ADB talent. You can get a guy like that in the 5th round, I'm all aboard. Dallas Wilson's a guy that you got to be targeting late in these drafts.
Yeah, those two Florida freshman wide receivers are exciting this year, especially if you pair them with DJ Lagway, and they're not being the incredible. I mean, Eugene Wilson's there, but they're not being the incredible talent there. I just feel like Dallas Wilson and Vernon Brown have a pathway here, and that's exciting to me. I got a question for you. So Quincy Porter, guy I love. When you're thinking about a wide receiver room like Ohio State, right? And you're going through the draft and you want to draft the best player available, but you know Porter might not play that much this year. Now, I do think that Porter and Mylan Graham will be a part of this offense, especially if Ohio State does get to run up the score. I think those two guys are the next guys that'll be involved in the offense. So they'll probably accumulate some stats, but it'll probably be, you know, sort of those backup level guys. But I think it's going to be really hard to keep Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter off the field this year. I do think they do get some stats. But when you're thinking about your strategy, right, do you take the 5th wide receiver for Ohio State because you know the pedigree, eventually they have a chance to be that 1st round draft pick? Or do you take, somebody that is going to produce this season, but maybe a lesser talent at that spot? Who are you thinking about? How do you think about when you come to that Devy question? How do you think about that?
I just take talent. Like, that's kind of how I look at it. Now, I will say it's hard with Ohio State because they just accumulate all those wide receivers. However, there is a caveat this year, because when you go through their depth chart, they're top heavy. Like Cardell Tate, Brandon Anderson, Jeremiah Smith, they're dudes. But when you're kind of looking at what's next, Bryson Rodgers is okay. I like Mylan Graham. I think Mylan Graham is definitely next guy up in that offense. But I think Quincy Porter's right there, right?
Yep.
Like back
He's
a couple
5
years ago, or even last year, Quincy Porter's 8, 7. Like, think about all those guys that we've been waiting, like, because some of them transferred out, right? So we're thinking, oh, okay, like now we got to wait another year. Quincy could get out there. Injuries happen. Like, injuries definitely happen to some of these guys too. And so when I'm looking at him, and I don't want to do an arbitrary number like, oh, if he's in the top 5, I'll draft him of the wide receiver room. But being 5th the Ohio State wide receiver room is different than being 3rd on freaking Cal. I don't know why I just threw Cal under the bus, but like Cal, or 2nd on Cal, or even hell, I'm going to be honest with you, 1st on Cal, probably. Like, if you're looking at Cal Bears or whatever it is, or even Texas, like Jamie French there. Texas is very, very solid at the wide receiver position with the guys that are there. I would much rather take a shot at Quincy Porter, who's 5th in Ohio State, who throws the football a ton, and is going to probably find a role there. So to your point, like I just take talent, but I really like Porter's situation just based on what's not behind him anymore, or what's not in front of him. Like, he's got opportunity now to really kind of step up and be their guy. And I think the only thing that would hold him back is probably maybe they run the ball more this year, depending on what's going on with that quarterback situation or whatever happens there. But from a talent standpoint, I lean Porter. And when you look at the depth chart, it makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, and I feel like I follow that too, and it can get a little bit confusing especially if you're doing the first time doing Devy, and you're selecting the fifth. You see 5 wide receivers go for Ohio State, and there hasn't been a wide receiver go that is going to be playing, is going to be catching passes, might be the number 1 wide receiver on their team. But then you got all these Ohio State wide receivers going. I do think you have to kind of balance that, and you have to know that these Ohio State wide receivers, maybe a couple of them don't play right away, but eventually they're on the path to potentially getting that first round pick. And that's where you get the most value, is those freshman wide receivers that end up actually becoming first round picks. That's where it is. And I do think Quincy Porter's got the size to be sort of that outside wide receiver at Ohio State. We've seen Emeka Ibuka, we've seen Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think Brandon Inniss kind of fits in that thing. I think Mylan Graham probably fits a little bit there as well in that spot. Quincy Porter's more of the outside type of guy, the Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith type of guy. That's kind of the role that I see him in, the X or Z type of wide receiver, as opposed to that slot guy. So I do think there's a lot to like about Quincy Porter. He did well in high school, and I think he'll do well in college. And the Ohio State beat is pretty excited about him as well too.
Yeah, and that's another one. I don't know where he went in this draft. Mylan Graham, I think, is another guy that is. He's not a freshman, so no one out there. He's not a freshman, but he's a guy that also really takes some shots on this year. So that's a guy. All right, let's talk about some deep cuts. And we just say deep cuts because after 5 rounds, it tends to get deepish. Jay's going to yell at me about Ohio State guy. Just shocker there for everybody listening. So quarterback, Tavien St. Clair going to 6th round. He's going to Ohio State. QB, Husan Longstreet, going to USC in the 7th round ADP-ish. Shekai Mills-Knight, running back out of Ole Miss, going the 7th round ADP. Malik Washington, Maryland quarterback, going to 8th round. I put Madden. Dang it. I don't know how to Nico's brother. Iamaleava. Gosh, I'll learn how to say it in the 10th round, just as someone I want to talk about. So we're going to touch on him. Nolan James, running back out of Notre Dame's also going pretty late there. And then we'll get into some other guys that are kind of off the board that we can kind of also mention, some freshmen in there. But what's your takeaway from this list, Jay?
I think Tavien St. Clair is a 5-star quarterback. He's just enormous. Which I think offers something different than Julian Sayin does this year. Ohio State is still in a QB battle. I thought Julian Sayin was going to kind of run away with it, but it's Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz. I think Tavien St. Clair has the furthest to go, and I think he's the least likely to start. But I think he has a physical tool set that is different than what Julian Sayin is. So he's got he's taller, bigger. He has maybe got a better, a stronger running game as well. So I think that he is an interesting option. What I'd say is he probably doesn't start this year, but if you can wait, then I think he's got a good path. And say what you will about the hit rates on quarterbacks, but if you go back and you look at just the 5-star hit rates, it might be less than 50%, but those are 5-star ones. They are pretty decent if you go back and look at most of them. So, Tavien St. Clair, I think in terms of value, if you have to get Bryce Underwood in the 1st round and Keelon Russell in the 3rd round, and then you can get Tavien St. Clair, who's going to be exposed to the Ohio State offense and all those great pass catchers. And you talk about situation, but it's going to take a year, maybe 2 years to get to that point. But I do think he's good enough. I think he's one of those guys that does have NFL potential. And I think he's an interesting one and a value that you can get versus those other guys that you have to take in the 1st or 3rd round. So that's the one guy where I'd say I'd probably push upward on him. But the argument that we keep making is if he's not going to start, he might get forgotten about a little bit. Although there's still that unknown piece of it. His value might come down if you have to draft him in the 3rd round. Maybe his value comes down about a bit. But if you have to draft him in the 6th round, that's not a terrible pick. And I know we kind of avoid quarterbacks, but I like the 5-star kid. I think he'll be pretty good at Ohio State. And maybe it's his 3rd year that he's starting. I don't know how the QB situation is. I do think that Julian Sayin wins it out. but it could be a sticky situation there in Ohio State, at least at the beginning of the season. I'm not sure how it all plays out, but I think Tavien St. Clair does have that NFL potential. And if you're comparing him to first round Bryce Underwood, second round or third round Keelon Russell, and you can get him sixth round, I love that value for him.
So the one thing I will say is they don't have a recruit yet from the quarterback position coming in next year. So that's something to be the highlight. Now they are going after a couple guys, Bell, but I think he's going to Texas. Like there's some guys out there that they definitely have offered, and we know how flips happen. They happen all the time. But right now, Tavien St. Clair might be their guy, right, for 2 years. So that's also something to know. That's another Devy tip. Go into recruiting, go wherever the hell you want to go, 247 Sports, On 3, wherever you go, and see if they are recruiting these guys as replacements, or see if they're okay. Hey, is Ohio State going after a quarterback already? Like, is he a number one guy? Because that sucks. Like, look at, like, that's not next year. If I take Tavien and they're going after the number one recruit in the country at quarterback, well, Tavion's not going to be there, right? It's just like Aaron Nolan. Look what happened to Aaron Nolan. Now he's at South Carolina. So you got to be very careful there. So that's one way to look at it. Tavien, to me, his tape is underwhelming. So I worry about that a little bit. He can still develop. And I think from the tape that I watched him, I think he still needs a redshirt. I think he is going to redshirt this year. He's got to work on that. But I don't know. I will say this. I don't like quarterbacks like in Devy. Like I don't. However, if you're going to take a shot at any of them, this is the rounds to do it in. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round. Like Husan Longstreet, I loved his tape. He's at USC. Why the hell not? I mean, Jaden Mavia, he's whatever. Like, he's all right. Like, I think his name is Jaden. I think his first name is Jaden. I should know this. But like, when I'm looking at it, like, I'm not that worried about him. Like, Longstreet's another guy. I'm falling in love. And this is where I get nervous, Jay, because I fall in love with some guys and they burn my ass on the back end. But Malik Washington from Maryland, I'm really falling in love with his profile and his situation, because I think he's going to be, if he doesn't start, he's playing right away this year. I think in that quarterback battle with Justin Martin, Justin Martin was not good for UCLA. I don't even think he really got the field for UCLA. Malik comes in as a top 5 guy rated at 247 Sports. I like his profile. I like what he's able to do. I think he's got dual threat upside. He's a dangerous runner. So like when he gets outside the pocket, that's what you really like to see there. The thing I go into though a little bit with Malik is that coach, God, I cannot think of his name off the top of my head, Maryland. He's a former Alabama guy. He's getting fired this year. Like, I have a hard time seeing him make it through this year. So where's Malik going to end up possibly? And he was really heavily recruited. When you look at his recruiting profile, there's a bunch of schools that absolutely would love his kid. I know Syracuse were after him. Arkansas was after him. He got some pretty big offers from some schools that you really like. Penn State offered him. So like, there's teams out there that definitely like him. Could you imagine him at Penn State after Aller leaves? Like there's like, and these are things you have to think of as you draft these guys, because you have to like, okay, what's their overall outlook? But he could start this year. Like, it would not shock me to see him out there. Love his dual threat ability. Love that. And even Madden from UCLA. Now, listen, I know Nico pissed a lot of people off, and he's at UCLA now. And Madden followed him. He transferred from Arkansas, and he goes to UCLA. Here's the thing, though, and I'm going to get just skewered for this take. I think Madden's a better quarterback than Nico. He was tearing up spring camp at Arkansas, like tearing it up. Like, I think they really thought they had a dude. Like, I think that's why they were so upset that he left. I would much more comfortably take Madden in the 10th, or he's not even really getting drafted. I just put him in the 10th round on this. I would much rather just take a flyer if it's a deep, deep league on Madden than trust Nico at UCLA. Like, I would rather do that because of all the stuff that I heard. Now, I might get burned, but I do think Madden was playing extremely well in the spring, and I don't mind taking a flyer way late on that kind of profile.
Oh yeah, that's a really interesting take, and just this latest mock draft, the fall of Nico.
Yeah,
touch on that. He went in the 7th round in what we'd call like a Devy 80 startup 80 mock draft type of thing. 7th round for Nico, which is a huge fall after this sort of the fiasco of this offseason. So I think that's a really interesting take, and on Madden.
Hey, that's what I'm here for. Interesting takes out here, kind of going it. The other guy, Shekai Mills-Knight, should probably be going higher from Ole Miss. I'm a pretty big fan of his profile. I think he's my running back too, actually. If I can remember, him and Bo Jackson were up there for me. And when you're looking at Ole Miss's depth chart, they have Logan Diggs. You know, we've seen that kind of new. They have Cron Lacey though. I mean, I know he's very good there. So Damian Taylor also, I think Damian Taylor transferred there. I don't remember. The transfers are getting a little crazy for me. But they definitely have some dudes in that room. So you're gonna have to wait on Shekai Mills-Knight a little bit, but I could see him kind of carving out a role. Him and Lacey, I think, could be very good. So 7th, 8th round is not a bad spot to get a guy that I think is a top 5 back in the class. But that's kind of how I look at it here. Any final takes on these guys, these deep cuts, or any other guys, Jay?
Yeah, so I want to ask you who we haven't listed, but some of the guys that stand out to me that haven't been on here. Talon Taylor out of Georgia. I think he's interesting. Caleb Cunningham, wide receiver Ole Miss. I think he could be pretty good. And then the running back position, we didn't talk about Akaline Deer, the Alabama commit. I think he could be somebody that's interesting as well. So, I guess out of the guys that we don't have up here, who are some of your favorites that you're looking to draft to take shots on out of this freshman class?
I don't mind taking a shot on Caleb Cunningham out of Ole Miss. I like him a lot. You know, when you look at 6'1", 190, already kind of has that frame. Was getting, man, Alabama went after him hard, and he ended up going to Ole Miss. Explosive. We just saw Trey Harris get day 2 capital from that system, so we like that. I think that when you're looking at what he can do, running after the catch is great. When he dual sport athlete too, he was a hell of a basketball player. He almost averaged like 20 points, and I give me that dual sport guys, like especially just from a wide receiver perspective. Didn't have a great senior year. I think he was a little banged up from what I remember, but his junior year, 50 catches, 1,100 yards, 14 touchdowns, huge big play guy. So yeah, if Caleb's still sitting there in that offense in Ole Miss's system, I like that idea. And this is again, it depends on the leagues you're in, right? Like, so, and when you're thinking of it, like Caleb might go a little earlier than 10th round. Like that's definitely a possibility when you're thinking of like when he's getting drafted. So that's just something to note when we're thinking of like, okay, why is this guy not going? Well, you know, there's some guys that like certain guys. That's also, and then also another thing to note for Devy, and Jay will attest to this. If someone subscribes to us, because there's definitely other people out there people subscribe to, like if someone subscribes to us in your league and you know that, use that to your advantage, right? You know, someone probably gonna be a little higher on Bo Jackson, or just know what those other guys are out there talking about, and then they're going to be higher on those guys, and you can use that to your advantage in drafts too. Because I guarantee you, some people out there love Caleb Cunningham. Like I guarantee you, someone out there is going to love Caleb Cunningham, and if somebody listens to that particular show or pod or whatever, you're going to have to draft him a little earlier than possibly the 8th or 9th round. So that's also something else to note.
Yeah, 2 more for you. And we haven't talked about him, but Alvin Henderson, I think he's a freshman coming in to play for Auburn. I think he had I think it was a lower league, but I think he had 10,000 plus yards in high school. I think we're pretty high on him, but he doesn't make this list here of players that get drafted quite yet. So what are your thoughts? And I've been in rookie drafts as well. What are your thoughts on Alvin Henderson from Auburn this year?
Yeah, I haven't. So it's funny you say this because I have a TDR Devy league that we do. And I was in a supplemental draft. I think I took Alvin in the 5th round of the supplemental draft. So he was going really late. And I was like, yeah, I'll take this kid, because when you're looking at Auburn's offense, when you're looking at who's ahead of him, Alston is there, Jeremiah Cobb, Darrell Robinson is fine. Alvin could be that guy. Like when you're thinking of like next year, as soon as next year, pretty good frame. You like what you see there. Probably is going to be 5'9", 205. If I had to guess, that's probably where he's going to finish there. But yeah, I mean, he was phenomenal. I mean, shoot, you look at it. I mean, he had a 3,000-yard season, Jay, which is pretty crazy. I think he had 61 touchdowns in a season. 68 total. So like, yeah, and obviously who the hell is he playing? That's also one. I mean, he's playing 1A though. He was Alabama class 1A. So I don't know Alabama. I should. Texas is different. 5A is the big A. I don't know how Alabama does it. But I mean, he's definitely, he definitely played against some competition there. I don't know what that competition was like. But he's definitely a great dart throw late. Production profile in a system that definitely highlights running backs, doesn't have that elite prospect ahead of him. Yeah, no, I think Alvin Henderson's a guy that you should definitely target. I did in my supplemental drafts. He's definitely someone to go after.
Love that. And we did touch on Lotzier Brooks having a good spring.
Yeah.
Derek Meadows. What do you think about him? The big, tall wide receiver at Alabama.
So it's so funny because I had to watch his tape like 4 times because I was like, all right, what is this kid? Because it was just something that I was like, I don't know. He was one of the hardest filmed guys I watched because he's huge. Those of you who haven't seen him, he's like 6'5", 6'6", 200 pounds. He did win like Gatorade track and field athlete, so he does have a track and field background. So like he does have like some athleticism background there. I think that he has a hell of upside, right? I don't think he's draftable yet. I don't know if he's a draftable player yet, but he does have a ton of upside, and he is ranked in my rankings. Like I do have him in there just from like that, just the athleticism and red zone guy. Like he could just be a red zone guy that kind of fills it there. I think his size with how tall he is kind of makes me a little nervous. And he didn't really have like a ton of production. So in high school, his senior year, 24 catches for 600 yards, 7 touchdowns. He did average 25 yards per catch though. And in junior year, caught 15 passes for 391 yards and 8 touchdowns. So that's what made me the most nervous because when we watched his tape, there was like there's some holes there he's got to develop, but he found himself in a great system. With the Grubb coming back to Alabama too, they could utilize him in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. If you had to name your guys of this class, I think I might like super or like give away too much here, but would you say Bo Jackson, Dallas Wilson would be your guys? Who, if you had to pick one or two other guys, who would be your guys, the guys you want to leave at the right cost, who you want to leave your freshman supplemental draft with?
So I would say just in general, when you're thinking of like, I give you 5. Keelon Russell, Alabama, is someone I really like that is like based on that. I'm not going to put Bryce in there because I don't want to jinx him. I want him to have a good career. If I pick him, he's not going to do it. So Keelon Russell, Alabama, Bo Jackson, Harlem Berry, those 2 guys to me are guys I'm definitely going after just based on that value there. And then, yeah, Dallas Wilson would be the 4th guy. And I've been going back and forth. Like if you think of the 5th guy, like Lotzier Brooks out of Alabama is someone that's there that I really like. But I'm going to just go ahead and throw Malik Washington in there. Give a quarterback so that people don't. I give 2 quarterbacks so people don't think I'm a hater when it comes to quarterbacks. But I think Malik Washington, he's growing on me, man. I think C2C is a perfect pick. In Devy, it gets a little more complicated just based on values and they got to be NFL guys. They got to raise it up there. But Malik, I put Malik in there.
Cool, love it.
What about you? Give me your top guy. Who are you going after?
Oh,
Quincy Porter. Quincy.
I'll give you one. I think Gideon Davidson.
Okay.
I think we de-emphasize the quarterbacks. We want to get a wide receiver or a running back. This guy's got a front line to playing time early. We've talked about that. I think he's got a great skill set. He's doing well. That's a guy, and he doesn't go. He isn't necessarily at the very top end of the first because people are drafting those quarterbacks. They want Dakorien more. They want some of these wide receivers. Everybody's got their favorite number 1 running back. Davidson could fall a little bit to the back end of the first or the second. That's a guy that I really like. If you trade back for him or grab him, I like him a lot. This as my guy.
Yeah, he could be. I mean, he could be one of those guys that you're just like, yeah, he's the running back one of this class next year because he just had that opportunity ahead of him. And Clemson has produced running backs. I mean,
yeah,
they have, and that system has done that too. All right. That's our show. We're talking freshman impact of the guys that are doing that. If you want to get into these mocks, if you want Devy content, Devy rankings, Devy everything, go join our Patreon. You can find the link below. You can go join our Substack. We drop articles there weekly and just kind of diving into kind of the player values, everything there. There's not a ton of people out there that do Devy anymore. And I know there's not a lot of free content out there. I wish I could give you free content, but I can't because my wife would kill me and I have to justify me spending time with Jay every week and all of these guys out here for that. But it is cheap. It's $5 a month. And don't be those people that join and just steal our shit and leave. Like that drives me crazy. Like it's $5 a month. We pour a ton of heart and soul into the content out there. Go join it. Go get in our Discord, which I would say is more valuable than anything because people just talk ball and talk Devy values and Dynasty values. There's a lot of incredible people in there that I really enjoy talking to on a daily basis. So go join our stuff. Next week, I haven't told Jay this, but we're doing a 2026 mock. So we're going to be doing a 2026 mock of the class. We're going to kind of go through maybe 3 rounds. Possibly we'll try to get to 3, maybe 2, depending on it's a tough class to mock, but we're going to have some fun with it. So give you an idea of what's coming next in the 2026 class. So we appreciate you guys. We'll check you guys out next week.